Welcome to Marketing. Grab some coffee and let's talk about what's working in marketing, who these strategies are designed for, and how to be customer centric while we do it.
This is Leanne with Marketing. Today I'm joined by Amanda Nielsen, and she is amazing. She's had quite a career that has spanned from marketing to partnerships. Amanda, tell us more about your background before we launch into our discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Leanne. Yeah, I've done a bunch of things in my career so far, starting with marketing, but most currently partnerships plus a million side projects. I currently run partnerships over at Box. I support like systems integrator and consulting partners as my full-time job. And then on the side, I run an e-commerce store called Thought Leader Labs where I sell like tech humor, like inspired merchandise, like hats and mugs and things like that. And then I also do content creation on LinkedIn. And most recently, I run a career cohort for people looking to pivot into partnerships as a career path from other backgrounds. So lots of side projects. But like I said, I started my career in marketing actually way back when. That's what I went to college for, and then started on the agency side, like pre graduation at one of the top HubSpot firms, and then started working there after college, and then eventually made the pivot over from marketing into partnerships, which has been really impactful and kind of changed the trajectory of my career. And I've been in partnerships at various SaaS companies ever since.
Awesome. And I love it because I want people to really note that like Amanda is really good at being like at the appropriate level for social media. And so if you're like maybe out of touch or maybe don't go do social media very much, thought leader is THOT. And it tickles me because it makes me so happy because I think it should be spelled like that. Just when you're looking up for her stuff, like which you should, that's the right way to find it.
The background from that like whole business being created, it's like obviously a play on words, like making fun of thought leaders, kind of challenging the idea of like what a thought leader in this like very very white very male space could look like. So like that's part of it, but it was like first and foremost inspired by situation I had like super early in my career where I was on like an all male team, like fresh out of college, very like work hard, play hard. Like when that culture was like at its absolute peak in like 2018, we were like playing ping pong and we were like kegerators in the office. It was like one of those environments. And some of my like male coworkers had basically like jokingly referred to me as like office thought, which was crazy. Because,
Yeah.
obviously I did nothing to like earn that title, but other than just be like, the single, like one conventionally attractive girl on this like super male team where it felt like I worked in a frat house, like low key. Anyways, and it was just like said in jest and like nobody even thought, anything of it. And we're like, what? We're just joking. But it was obviously like super rude and impactful. And so the name is also like in a reclamation of that like slur.
Yeah. And that's what tickles me about it is that like I caught on that you were using it like ironically pretty fast. Because it's never appropriate to call your colleague a thought
Yeah.
ever. Period. End of story. Like there's no HR person that's gonna be like, yeah, that's cool. So um part of this though is that as one of your many avenues or income streams or side projects, things that you do, is that I feel like you've brought this marketing mindset and this like how to tickle people's fancy, how to send a message in a concise way, how to, strategically achieve business goals. And that's part of, where I kind of want to take this as far as like translating, the overarching thing that you do is you're really good at building connection, building humanity into things, having fun with it. and making it like people centered. So as far as like that kind of like thought, oh, I'd love to hear more about like some of your favorite, maybe like one or two of your favorite marketing strategies that are just like hills you'll die on, where you're like, look, if you're not doing this, then you are missing out.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for saying all that. I would agree with you. My first and foremost prerogative is like having fun and doing stuff that feels true and authentic to me, and being silly and having a little whimsy, and also like focusing on like relationships and connection has always been the forefront of my strategy. It wasn't really a strategy at first; it was just kind of like my default, and it turns out that works really well in all aspects of business, both in like my personal branding and like my entrepreneurial journey, but also in like my corporate work and my full-time roles. So appreciate you calling that out. Um, I guess that kind of is a good segue into like my ride or die strategy, just being authenticity, whether you're an individual person or a business, like stripping away the fluff and like really tapping into like what is actually real when you're trying to get through to people is what will always work. So like as an individual, if you're trying to become a thought leader, a personal brand, whatever, on LinkedIn or any other platform, being real and like being a little weird and being really candid is what resonates. Like I can point to so many times in my career where like my like biggest things that have ever happened to me have been the result of like one, like something really shitty happening, being called office thought, for example, me being super candid and open about that, sharing that with people, and then running with it, turning it into a business name, for example. Another example would be a couple years ago, I had gotten poached from my corporate role that I've been at for like 4 years, brought on to this new company to be their head of partnerships, like big promotion, like big deal. I was like super excited, was obviously sharing a ton with my network about this new role. And then like literally 50 days into it, and I'm talking like full days, not even 50 business days, like 2 months, started on like September 5 and got laid off on October 31, which is very spooky. Um, Essentially what had happened was right after I'd started, the board had appointed a new CRO and CFO, and they basically came in and were like, what the hell's partnerships, and gutted the whole org. The VP who hired me, everyone below me, and a bunch of other functions as well. And that was like exceptionally humbling and like mortifying, right? I was like, guys, look, I just got promoted. Like, I'm doing this big girl job, like, blah, blah, blah. And then I had to come back and say, like, hey, like, they fired me, which was like, I think the instinct would be to keep that private, right? Because it is really humbling, and it's shameful, especially when you make a big fuss about it. But I've never been one to like hide stuff. I've always been very open with like my struggles, like just because it's how I process. Like I'm a very like verbal processor, written processor. Like I'm always creating, and that's how I like work through stuff. And um I like my community, so I just happen to like do it pretty publicly. And in this case, that was the first thing I did, was like went to my network and was like, hey guys, like this absolutely terrible thing happened to me. Like, I'm in a really shitty situation. And I just kind of like made lemonade out of lemons. And ultimately, like that big ordeal got me so much like attention, so many new connections. Like the post went viral. Like I got a ton of people reaching out, trying to help me get a job. It helped me land my current job at Box. Like, I didn't go apply for it. Like the VP of partnerships found me by just like putting myself out there and being honest about it. And I think like the coolest thing that came of that experience was I was featured in Business Insider because like I had gotten laid off like so dramatically. It was like newsworthy. And I used that as an opportunity to share too, like how posting about it on LinkedIn helped me land the next thing, and just was like so beneficial to me. So all of that to say, like that authenticity and like raw honesty, even when it's like super uncomfortable, has done nothing but benefit me. So I'd say like that as an individual, but also as a company too. Obviously, you have some more guardrails when you're speaking as a brand as opposed to an individual person. But I think there's different ways that you can channel that like real humanity and like authenticity through individuals, whether it's like having your employees build thought leadership in their own personal brands and represent you that way. Like in my role at Box and every other corporate role I've held, like so much like lead gen and opportunity comes from like people know me as Amanda. They know me because of my personal brand. They go, oh, I had no idea Box even did that, or whatever. It's been extremely beneficial in my corporate work. And then like the other thing that, companies can leverage is going to be obviously like influencers, having like real people who genuinely endorse your product or service, speaking to their audience about it. I think it's like so much more impactful, especially in like B2B and technology. It's like one thing to be, an Instagram influencer and a skincare brand like sends you some face wash and you're like, oh my God, I love this face wash. Like that's easy. It's like, okay, we take that with a grain of salt. But it's a whole other thing to have, like a B2B influencer, someone on LinkedIn, like putting their whole basically like professional reputation on the line to represent this product. I think like it carries a lot more merit, just in how involved it actually like needs to be in order to say like, I use this software every day in my job at Box. I use it for my side hustles, like whatever, I endorse it. So I think like the personal branding and the influencer avenues are kind of, some of the best ways that companies can channel that authenticity too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know that I struggle with trying to keep my, unsavory experiences private. And I kind of went the other way is like I was afraid to announce it when I got like a role because I was like, oh man, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna be super embarrassed about making a big fuss about this on LinkedIn. And so like I was like, okay, well, I'm really unsure about them. And then 30 days later, I got laid off. So I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't say anything. But now everyone thinks I just did nothing for that whole time when really I was doing something. So, be more Amanda than Leanne if that happens to you because like it's just a part of startup life. It's a part of the modern economy.
So,
Um and it just people want to help you.
yeah, no,
They do.
100%. I think people so underestimate like others like willingness to help. Like in my work for like the career cohort and like helping people pivot into partnerships and doing like mentorship, one of the biggest things that I tell people is like you just have to ask. Like you would actually be shocked at like how easy it is to get a referral from someone that super loosely. It's like anytime someone pings me and is like, hey, there's an open role at Box, like, I'm interested and can you put in a word for me or connect me with this person or whatever. As long as your approach is like thoughtful and genuine, why wouldn't I help you? There's just no reason not to. And like I've never had a negative experience asking for help, whether it was, hey, like network, this terrible thing happened to me. Had a lot of experiences where I've had bad things happen and I've just been super open about it. Like people are overwhelmingly supportive. And like I can count on one hand like the amount of like negative experiences I've had as a result of being super honest and vulnerable.
Yeah. And I think that like to kind of follow up on that is that at worst, people are just going to ignore you. And that doesn't feel great. That feels yucky. But they aren't going to be like mean unless you come at them in a super transactional way. And I
Totally.
think that that's part of the difference between being authentic and like building community and real connection is the reciprocity. And so I think that that's also part of like what works for you and for others is that like it's very clear that you give back too. Like when you ask, like people know like, oh, well, she actually needs this instead of just like she's constantly asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for saying that. That's a really good point. And yeah, I think like paying it forward and like putting deposits into your community is so important. And ultimately is beneficial to you in the end, but also it's like that's how you build community. Like, I remember after my big, long, well, it really wasn't that long. It felt long, but my job search after my dramatic layoff, as unemployed for November and December, and then I landed my role in January. Um, but once I finally had my like offer letter signed and I had a couple weeks before my start date, I was like, because so many people had been so helpful, sending me, links to job listings, offering to put in a word for me, inviting me to interview. Like, it was overwhelming how much help I had received. I was like, oh my God, like I need to, give back. And so like in my free time before my new role, I like started a little job board, just like from people that I know in my network. And I made my like whole focus for that little bit of time off, just like, trying to pay it forward to other people, help people get roles. And, I practice that in other ways too, like in my social media work. Like starting out, like it was so scary. It's really scary to like post and be vulnerable when you don't have, a bunch of followers who are commenting and supporting you no matter what. But you have to start there. And, I can recall when I was first starting out, like certain people who were just like always like ride or die, like super supportive of me from the very beginning. And like had not had those people's support early on, like who knows what would have happened. So I always try and make an effort to like support smaller creators or people who are earlier in their careers or, new to the space that I'm in. I'm always trying to, help people wherever I can.
Yeah, I love that. I think it matters like quite a lot. And I think that's something that we have in common. And the connections that we have in common are people who just do that by default
Yeah.
too. So
Peter,
like,
Peter's like the best. He's been in my corner for like as long as I can remember, and like love him forever. He's the best.
yeah, just rock star. So um, just kind of thinking about how this all translates to like strategy and like business and like GTM is that like anyone can go to like G2 and look up your business and anyone can Google your company, but like they don't know if you're any good or if it's just marketing or maybe your website sucks but like no one knows. And so what we'll do is we'll like text people like each other or Peter or like we'll be like, hey, have you used this? Hey, like, what do you think of this? Or we'll see that there's a partnership or a collab and we'll be like, I trust that company. So they get my credibility too.
Mhm.
And I think that like kind of shared community and credibility is a really big factor in this. Can you think of like a partnership or like a situation where like or just maybe like a time where you're like, look, maybe you're like a major organization and influencers are really just like a drop in the bucket and they aren't really going to get you far, or vice versa, where it's like a very small organization and they desperately need influencers or partnerships just to get started and to get some sort of momentum going. Like where are the boundaries? Like, where does it work and where does it not work?
Yeah. So I think like more broadly, like I think of like influencer strategy as like, a tactic that falls under the broad umbrella of like partnerships in the context of B2B. When you get into D2C, it's a little different, but for our purpose, like B2B, influencers, and then all the other tactics that go into partnerships. So like true strategic partnerships is what I work in, and have been in for most of my career. And I think that having a robust partner community, comprised of individuals and other companies is like the absolute best thing you can do for your brand credibility and just your ability to market to people. I point to examples like Salesforce and HubSpot as like, really successful like companies who've done this well, who've built communities, who have created such fruitful partner programs and like infrastructures that it drives people to like willingly like evangelize. Like if you look at Salesforce, for example, like the Salesforce community, the trailblazer community of individuals who are often working at companies that are also partnered with Salesforce, is like it's like a cult. Like you can see my like Salesforce plushies like on my, back shelf there.
Yeah.
And there's people who are like, ride or dying for Salesforce, going to all the events, speaking, getting all the certifications, starting their own consultancies or technology companies built on or around Salesforce. And like, that is like the ideal case scenario. Like that's how you get to be a multi-billion dollar company, is when you can create an ecosystem where people can build their own businesses off of your product or service. Like that's ideal. Um, and so, I can't say enough like how underrated partnerships like a growth lever is. I think people are starting to come around a lot more. Like we're starting to see more and more companies um, try and build programs and hire for this function, but it's still extremely new, like relative to things like marketing and sales. Like those have been around forever. And the exciting thing too is like you can adopt partnerships whether you're a big established company or you're just starting out. Like I work at Box, and Box is, an almost 20-year-old company, $1 billion in revenue. And partnerships is a relatively new function for us, relative to the last 20 years, only in the last 5 years or so that they've really leaned in. And, on the other hand, I have like a freelance client who is a bootstrapped startup consisting of like 2 people, and all of his growth has been exclusively through partners. And so now he's leaning in and saying, oh my God, like this works so well. I don't even need to hire a sales team yet. And now he's working with me to help like formalize a program. So it really benefits you no matter who you are or where you're at business wise.
I love it. Yeah. And I think that like kind of giving that, expanding on that makes a big difference, because people just, they get lost in the verbs and the like acronyms and jargon. And, to be clear is that partnerships really is many different flavors. And I'm all in on it, frankly, because I agree. Like I think that, there's no one it doesn't work for. And it's just making sure that like you set it up correctly is like where it like makes or breaks it. So thinking through things, if I mean, I hope I didn't spoil the plot. I think that partnerships is a big part of the future, but do you think the future of marketing, like where do you think that's going? Where do you think it should go? Are they the same? Like kind of like what's on your radar that you're clocking?
Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting, like, coming from, like, a marketing background and going into partnerships. I feel like that served me really well, because the best marketing is, like, relationship focused, and so it lends itself really well. I always joke that, like, partnerships is the best parts of marketing and, like, none of the worst. So, like, I get to, like, co-host events and, like, travel and be in person with people and work together on things and have this like very like non-transactional relationship. And I'm not sending out mass marketing spray and pray emails with like wicked boring copy and like building landing pages and stuff. Like it's all that stuff that like is starting to become less and less effective, and all of the stuff that works really well. So in terms of like where I think the future of marketing is going, in B2B, I'd say definitely like leaning in on like empowering like employees to build personal brands and like employee advocacy and social media, obviously, influencers. And then I'd say like partnerships. There is partner marketing, under that umbrella too. Joining forces with another organization to reach more people in like a more genuine way. I'd say that is all like absolutely the future. I'd say like the really obsessive, like demand generation, like insanely data driven era of marketing is over, or at least it's fading. I think people are starting to understand that like there are so many things that are very difficult to quantify, specifically relationships and word of mouth and like brand sentiment. And people are trying to quantify them. They're trying. And we'll probably get there some way, but I guess what I'm trying to say is we're putting so much less emphasis on like, well, how many people lingered on this landing page and how many people clicked through the email and how many people downloaded the white paper. That stuff is becoming less important and people are starting to shift to like a more human approach to marketing. I always joke, like I've always been joking about marketing attribution, like how ridiculous it is. And it's like one of the most popular things on my e-commerce store. I was like, I have one of the mugs here, but this is like the absolute bestseller. It just says marketing attribution's fake. We literally made it up. And people just like, they think this is the best thing. Cause it is true. We kind of did just make it up. And like, that was inspired by my early experiences in my career. Like at the marketing agency, super successful agency, like I said, top in like HubSpot ecosystem, like really successful company. But one of their like kind of shticks was like, oh, like we're different. We pay our marketers like salespeople because we are so focused on attribution and contribution to revenue, which like, in theory sounds awesome. And like, yeah, in a perfect world, like, yeah, marketers should be contributing to revenue, but it's like at the end of the day, like they're not. You're not a sales rep. You're not touching the sales cycle. You're generating everything that comes before and you might be influencing. But my point being, like, to just measure a marketer the same way you measure a salesperson is kind of reductive. And it was ultimately resulting in me not getting paid. And because our attribution process was crazy. It was like this crazy like Google Sheet calculator where we would say like, well, an interaction with a marketing email in this campaign is worth this percent and this percent. It was just like this like crazy, super painstaking process that was kind of arbitrary. And so I was just like, we literally just made this up. Like, what are we talking about? Like, really, what are we talking about? So that was kind of, what inspired all that. And I think my take, remains, and it just has proven to be true as we move away from this like era of like demand.
I mean, I see it on the horizon and I hope that we get there faster. And as one of the people that I do want us to measure stuff. So for the record, you should still measure it because you need to know if week over week, month over month, your campaigns are flopping. Like you need to know the big lagging indicators. But I think that, one of the things is that like short of being completely psychic and mind readers, like you're just never going to know. And that it's too often I see people trying to put together some like master sheet and some like, well, what's the TCV for this? What's the ROM for this? And it's like, you're getting really high here and really low here. And like, you're not doing anything long enough for any of this to be statistically significant. So like, what are like, it's not even vanity metric because it's just pure like intellectual ego like driven stuff and apologies but not apologies like I want us to measure stuff. What measures get managed, you should know your numbers, but you need to make money, so all of your numbers could be great. If you're not making money, it doesn't matter. Like don't matter. Like
100%. Yeah. And, all of that is not to say that we shouldn't be measuring. We absolutely should. Because like that data is important. But I guess my main takeaway here is that is not the be all and end all of marketing. And there is so much like magic, so to speak, that can't be quantified that we can't lose sight of.
Yeah. Like, are you going to give me like 30% of like my revenue metric to be like looked cohesive across the whole funnel? Like, where's that? That's not, you can't measure that the same.
Totally.
But it matters so much so that people aren't like bouncing. They
Yeah.
aren't like, so yeah, that's a hill I'll die on. It's just, get a little spicy about that one. So okay, last question is always such a fun one. What is a question that someone should ask you, but they don't? And this can be like everyone asks you about like this thing that's like XYZ, and they really need to start at the beginning and ask you about like ABC. They're just missing the mark because they're just like putting the cart before the horse, or something about you as a human that you just want more people to know about you.
Oh my gosh. That's a really good question. I'd say like on the partnerships front, I think I get a lot of people coming to me asking for guidance on like the tactical and the execution of partnerships. Like I do obviously like consulting and advisory on the side. And I think so many people are like putting the cart before the horse, and they're like, well, how do we get leads from partners? And it's like, well, maybe the question you should actually be asking yourself is like, who do we partner with? Why do we want to partner? Why should they give us leads? Like, kind of backtracking and taking partnerships from like a more macro level and being really intentional in the way you like build an ecosystem. I think a lot of people kind of start farther ahead than they should. And so my specialty is like helping people identify their ideal partner persona and then building a program catered to that persona before we even go out and start talking to people. Um, so I'd say that. I think this is like not really related to much of what we've been talking about, but like get a lot of questions. This is more so in like my role at Fox, but like around like AI, how do we start implementing AI? Like what? And I think a lot of people like lack a like content strategy. And obviously like that's the crux of like what I do at Box is like at the end of the day, we do content repository among a bunch of other stuff, but it's like so critical to have all of your unstructured data, like documents, PowerPoints, Excel sheets, videos, like all of that in one unified space. But like the average enterprise has documents and content scattered everywhere. It's like, there's a version of the document on someone's desktop, and then it's in email attachments, it's in Slack, it's in OneDrive, it's in Google Drive, like it's everywhere. And so your AI is only as good as the unstructured data that it pulls from. And so if the repository that you're pulling from doesn't have the full picture, the most up-to-date info, your AI strategy is always, going to fall flat. So I think that's another example of like people kind of putting the cart before the horse. And it's like, well, you don't need an AI strategy yet. First and foremost, you need a content strategy. So those are kind of like my, I guess, business one. On the personal level, like I get so many people being like, how do I start a personal brand? Like, and I think the better question is like, should you start a personal brand? I think we have like drilled it into people's heads that like you 100% need to be creating content. I get so many people being like, Amanda, like, I'm scared to post. I don't want to post. I don't have anything to say. And it's like, well, plenty of people have been building really fruitful careers for many, many years before, LinkedIn became like a true social platform, before personal branding, before all of that. And, like, I don't think everyone needs to be a content creator. Like, if you're getting along fine and like it's not critical to your job, like, don't force it if it's not coming natural to you. I think in my space, like I work in partnerships and social media, it's like it's very beneficial to me to be doing that. But if you're, working in another function, like if you're in like corporate legal, you need to be a thought leader? Probably not. I mean, it's cool if you want to be, but not everyone needs a personal brand is kind of my like hot take.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Like if it doesn't spark joy, don't do it. If it's not aligned with your personality, then it's going to come across and you're just going to be swimming uphill. Also, back to the job function thing, I don't know, maybe if you're in like cybersecurity and it's your job to like keep bad actors out of stuff, maybe
Yeah.
you don't need to give them the like guidebook on how to like thwart you. Like
Ex-
it's okay.
Exactly. So like I think a lot of people like have like FOMO or like feel some level of like guilt or inadequacy for like not being like a social butterfly, social media person. And it's like, well, like you don't have to be. I just happen to love attention and creative and like to post stuff online. Like that's just like the luck of the draw. But it's like you don't have to be like that to be successful. And it also depends on like what your definition of success is. So
Yeah, and I think that's really a great insight is it depends on what your definition of success is. Because having a personal brand for the sake of making connections, wonderful definition, absolutely fitting. Having a personal brand for sake of, necessarily having dollars attached to it, not guaranteed.
yeah. And I think too, like I think what's most fulfilling for me about like all the stuff that I do, my personal brand, my like entrepreneurial endeavors, all of that is that like at the end of the day, for me, it's about the community and the connections. Like, yeah, I make money from it, and like that's cool and stuff. Um, but at the end of the day, like the value of like having my community is like so intangible. And like that's what like sparks joy for me is when I get a DM that's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you talked about whatever polarizing topic or shitty experience you've had. Like I've had the same thing happen to me and I was like scared to talk about it and it made me feel terrible. So like thank you for saying that. Or like, I've made some really, really good friends from like LinkedIn and Twitter because those are kind of my two big platforms. And it's just stuff like that. And it just comes from a place of like genuine desire for connection.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think I've made a lot of amazing friends from, LinkedIn and Slack communities. And I think it's just, finding like-minded people wherever their water cooler is.
Totally. Yeah, especially in this world that's like very, I mean, everyone's like remote. It's so different now post COVID, like so much less happens in person and we're becoming more and more isolated as technology progresses, especially AI. Um, we're definitely going to continue to see like an increased desire for like connection and things like, the spray and pray, like broad marketing content and those sorts of strategies are just going to become less effective. So that's again like why I'm so bullish on like partnerships and everything that falls under it.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree completely. All right. Is there anything that I forgot to ask or that you think that people need to hear before we wrap this up?
Oh, that's a really good question. I guess my only like shameless plug is like if you're burnt out in whatever go to market or whatever career path you're in, really, and you're looking for something that offers more flexibility, better comp, more opportunities for making genuine connections without that like transactional nature of like sales or even marketing. Um, like partnerships as a career path could be really interesting and a good fit. And that's something that I'm really focused on right now is supporting people who come from all different backgrounds in one, like learning what partnerships is, and two, like actually, preparing to pivot into it and how to take, that background and translate it into skills that will be appealing to people hiring for partnerships. So like my career cohort that I run every other month. It's 4 weeks long. I run it on a platform called Maven. Definitely reach out to me if you have questions. If you need to like get a holiday gift for your office bestie, I have my e-commerce store with like all sorts of silly like tech industry like inside jokes, mugs, hats, notebooks, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll have those links in the show notes too. So, you won't have to look too hard, but don't forget to look. Um, Amanda, if people are looking for you on LinkedIn, they could find you there. Could you spell your last name for people just so they can find you easy?
Yes, it's Nielsen. It's the second most common last name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, anything that ends in en is like pretty Danish generally. But yeah, I'm on there. I'm on TikTok. I also have Thought Leader Labs. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok with that as well. And then obviously thoughtleaderlabs.com is my website. And then I have my personal website as well, which is just very Demanda, DEMANDA.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited. I also, guys, you really should check out her pivot to partnerships cohort thing. It's so good. It's really well done. And so, yeah, thank you for joining me. And everyone, I hope that you have some really great takeaways. If you need to find me, I am also chronically online on LinkedIn. And you can email me info@markigy.com. Thank you.
Yay. Thanks,
Yay.
Leanne. That was fun.